Northern Appalachia is a place that looks like it should already be gone. The coal is finished. The steel is finished. Most of the men whose grandparents mined these hills are buried somewhere else now. But the towns are still here. One is a company town, whose last families walked out one morning carrying only the photographs. Another was 7 days from the wrecking ball, when a stranger showed up with a camera and asked to film. In Ohio, a cave wide enough to swallow a small stadium, floored in the ash of fires nobody has ever been able to date. And on the Mahoning, a water wheel from 1845, turning still, on a river that has forgotten what it once fed. Around 15 million people live across Northern Appalachia, in coal patches and mill towns the industry walked away from long ago. Some houses up here are still heated with the same anthracite their grandfathers pulled out of the mines. In one Pennsylvania town, the ground itself has been burning underground since 1962. And children learn the difference between anthracite and bituminous before they learn to drive. But this is not a museum. This is everyday life up here. Ask anyone up here what keeps them, and every one of them tells you the same thing. And if your family came from up here, a grandfather down the mines, a grandmother in a coal patch house, or if you ever spent a summer up here, or just drove through once, tell us in the comments. Those are the ones we look forward to. In northern Pennsylvania, there's a forest where almost nothing growing here today is original. Allegheny National Forest covers a corner of the state, but its forests were heavily logged, stripping away much of the old-growth timber. The accident made a fortune. Cherry cut from these hills went into fine furniture around the world, and for years, no national forest earned more money. Foresters then leaned into the mistake, weeding out lower-value species with herbicide and helping the winter along. What grew back is the new hardwood ground people walk through now, black cherry and sugar maple above beech and hemlock. Second growth comes in thick here, and hikers trade reports of sudden cold and whistling that is not wind. Their rules are strict: no whistling after dark, no looking up into the canopy, and a voice calling a name means walk faster, never run, because running turns a person into prey. Sugar maple came through all of it too, and every spring families across these counties tap it for syrup. Sap runs for a few weeks a year, and everything rests on the weather. Producers need thawing days and freezing nights in sequence, and the season ends the moment the nights turn mild. "40 gallons of it fill a single jug of syrup." Tapping does no lasting harm, so the same maples get worked by one generation after another. Maple Weekend throws open the sugar houses, where a few holdouts still fire their evaporators with wood, because that is how their grandparents did it. The water leaving these ridges collects behind Kinzua Dam in the Allegheny Reservoir. It stretches back for 25 miles, keeping the river towns dry and the coves full of boaters and campers. But along the wooded shore, a quieter presence keeps its distance: the bobcat, rarely seen and even more rarely heard. Mountain lions and lynx were shot and trapped out of the state, and the bobcat nearly followed them. It is the only wild cat left here. A bounty ran on them for decades, and even once the payments stopped, there was no protection for them in Pennsylvania. Second growth saved the survivors, because logging leaves stumps, slash, and fallen trunks that hide a crouching cat completely. It works a rocky ledge above a deer path, motionless for hours, hunting by eye and ear. Then everything happens at once. A low creep to the edge of cover, followed by a rush across open ground. Deer are the prize on a hard winter day, but most of the time the target is an eastern gray squirrel feeding in the branches above that ledge. The bobcat launches off the ledge as the squirrel breaks for the trunk. It closes the gap before its prey can climb, and the ambush is over. But there was a time when they were anything but ordinary. Once, they crossed this region in numbers nobody has recorded since, pouring out of the woods and stripping cornfields as they went. Pennsylvania even paid a bounty for them. In Ohio, taxpayers were ordered to hand in squirrel scalps along with their money. Nobody ever explained the migrations, and they stopped long before anyone could study one properly. Each squirrel hides thousands of nuts through the season, one at a time, then finds them again by memory rather than smell. To handle that workload, a region of its brain expands, then shrinks again once the food is gone. Those that stayed put helped rebuild the forest, because every forgotten acorn has a chance to become a tree. Something browsing beneath those trees is far too big for the cat on the ledge, the American elk, safely out of reach of the little ambush waiting above. They are not native to these forests. The eastern elk that once lived here was hunted out completely, leaving the region without a single one for decades. Wildlife officials later brought elk from Yellowstone, shipping them east by train and releasing them into an unfamiliar country. At first, they had to learn what the forest could provide, grazing on grasses, leaves, and young shoots. Many did not survive the move. Those that did were squeezed into a single mountain pocket where the herd slowly built back, with bulls bugling through the autumn woods. Meanwhile, coal drew people into a very different kind of settlement, one preserved today at Eckley Miners' Village. Its growth began after anthracite, a hard, high-quality coal, was found beneath the hills, attracting workers from nearby communities and overseas. At its peak, the village was home to hundreds of miners and their families, with company houses, a school, stores, and a breaker supporting a busy coal operation. As the mines declined, jobs vanished and families left. The village faced demolition until a Hollywood film crew chose it as a 19th century mining town, helping save it. Far to the west, Ohio's Hocking Hills State Park shelters a pocket of northern forest inside cool, shaded gorges. Here, the gorges stay cold enough to support hemlock, Canada yew, and yellow birch, species more typical of forests hundreds of miles north, stranded here when the ice pulled back. Above them, Blackhand sandstone forms the cliffs, and because a softer band lies between harder layers, the walls gradually hollow inward into natural shelters. Across these hills, dozens of such shelters can be found, but Old Man's Cave is the most famous, named for a hermit who once lived beneath its overhang. Richard Rowe left his family's trading post after the War of 1812 and spent the rest of his life here, where local accounts say he was later laid to rest. Today, waterfalls, footbridges, and towering sandstone cliffs draw visitors through the gorge, making it one of Ohio's best-known natural attractions. His overhang is not the biggest here. Ash Cave, an hour south, swallows every crowd that arrives. Here, the rock folds back into the hillside like the inside of a shell. It is Ohio's largest recess cave, with a ceiling high above the forest floor, and settlers named it for the ash piles they found inside. After rain, a narrow waterfall spills over the rim, sometimes freezing into a column in winter. The trail bears the name of Emma Gatewood, who at 67 set out for what she called a walk, and became the first woman to hike the Appalachian Trail alone in one journey. Ponds in the woods below draw the wood duck, a bird that raises its young in tree holes instead of on the ground. Its glossy green and purple head, bold white markings, and red eyes make the drab brown hen easy to overlook beside it. They feed on seeds, acorns, berries, and insects, often dabbling in shallow water or picking food from the forest floor. The species nearly disappeared as hunters sought its meat and feathers, while the old trees it needed for nesting were cleared away. Protection from hunting and nest boxes helped bring it back, and its webbed feet even carry small claws that let it grip bark and perch on branches. A hen may choose a cavity high above the ground, then leave her ducklings to make the leap soon after hatching. They climb to the entrance, drop to the forest floor, and scatter unharmed. Once they leave, there is little reason to return to that tree, much like Yellow Dog Village, a coal town in Pennsylvania that emptied out and was left behind. It began as a company settlement for limestone miners, drawn by nearby quarries and steady work. Workers who signed agreements not to join a union gave the village its unusual name, borrowed from the insult aimed at them. At its peak, families lived in company houses, and the village grew around the quarry that supported them. When the mine closed, the site became a mushroom farm, but contaminated water drove out the last families, leaving their furniture, photographs, and belongings behind. Down the road, Jim Thorpe took a very different path, turning its own industrial past into a new future. Then called Mock Chunk, the town sent anthracite coal downhill on one of the country's early railroads, with loaded cars coasting to the canal by gravity alone. Mules hauled the empty cars back up, riding in wagons on the return journey. When faster routes took the coal trade away, the railroad carried tourists instead, until the Depression ended the business and sent the tracks to scrap. The mines closed soon after, leaving the town searching for a new future. That came when athlete Jim Thorpe's widow offered his grave to any town willing to take it, and two struggling boroughs merged, adopted his name, and built a memorial around it. His sons and the Sac and Fox Nation fought to return his remains to Oklahoma, but the courts allowed the town to keep his grave. Above the river, the Asa Packer mansion still recalls the wealth built from coal and rail. Asa Packer arrived to captain coal boats on the canal, gambled everything on an unfinished railroad, and founded a university with what it paid him. Inside, Victorian woodwork, ornate wallpaper, stained glass, and lavish furnishings stayed untouched for decades, while the woods outside are filled with American black bears. It is the largest animal walking these mountains. These bears grow heavier here than almost anywhere else, with some reaching extraordinary sizes. Acorns and beech nuts explain most of that, and protecting the nut trees is the most useful thing anyone can do for the species here. Nearly everything else it eats is plant matter, insects, and whatever has already died. Scent finds all of it, and there is very little a bear will not investigate twice. Winter is dormancy rather than true hibernation, and a bear in an open nest of leaves can wake, walk out, and go looking for food. That forest floor that feeds the bears also supports another large browser, the white-tailed deer. These animals eat almost everything within reach, from acorns and wildflowers to shrubs and the green forest floor. Their long legs and powerful muscles let them bound through thick cover at surprising speed, while their white tail flashes as a warning when danger appears. A grown one has few natural enemies here, since wolves and mountain lions disappeared from much of the region generations ago. Bucks grow a new set of antlers each year, then shed them after the breeding season, only to begin the cycle again when spring arrives. They also rely on the same forest trails year after year, along familiar routes between feeding areas, resting spots, and water. With so many mouths feeding in the same woodlot, young trees struggle to get established, leaving few forests to reach old age except a grove at Swallow Falls State Park in Maryland. Here, old-growth hemlocks more than 3 centuries old have survived storms, logging, and centuries of change that provide shelter for specialized wildlife. The grove covers only a few dozen acres, rising beside Muddy Creek Falls, Maryland's tallest free-falling waterfall. Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Harvey Firestone once camped beneath these trees at the invitation of Maryland's first forester, helping make conservation a public cause. The campaign worked, but now a tiny insect threatens what the saws spared, the hemlock woolly adelgid, which has killed these trees across the east. Crews have released predatory beetles for years to slow its spread. One bird hunting above this canopy came closer to disappearing than the hemlock ever did, the Peregrine falcon. It disappeared from this side of the country in a single generation. Farm chemicals moved up the food chain and weakened its eggshells until they could not bear the weight of a parent. Hundreds of pairs once nested east of the Mississippi, yet surveys later found none. Biologists rebuilt the population by raising chicks in boxes on cliffs and towers, feeding them through chutes so they never grew accustomed to human faces. Everything about the peregrine is built for the dive. Its wings fold tight, its body narrows, and a small, bony structure inside each nostril breaks the force of the rushing air. But not every bird here needs speed to survive. High among the branches, the Baltimore Oriole searches for another type of meal. Insects, berries, and fruit make up much of its diet through the warmer months. With a brush-tipped tongue, it laps nectar from flowers and trees, including tulip poplar, a common tree across the Appalachians. High in the treetops, its bright colors flash between the leaves. The male has a black head, orange breast, and white wing bars, while the female has softer yellow and brown plumage. Its clear, whistling song can carry through the treetops, sometimes revealing the bird before it comes into view. By late summer, the orioles head south, while another world carries on below. The No. 9 coal mine, where miners worked beneath the mountain for more than a century. Other mines in the region flooded, but this one drained naturally, staying open until cheaper fuels made anthracite unprofitable. Below ground, the company even carved a hospital room from solid rock, revealing the dangers that came with life inside the mine. Today, mine cars carry visitors into the mountain instead of hauling coal out. Above ground, the Youghiogheny River at Ohiopyle State Park takes a path that runs in an unexpected direction. While most major rivers in the eastern states flow south, the Youghiogheny turns north, cutting through a sandstone gorge before plunging over the falls at Ohiopyle. George Washington followed the river in search of a route to the forks of the Ohio, but the falls stopped his journey, forcing him to continue on foot. Later, logging and railroads transformed the gorge, and hotels drew visitors to a town that once called itself Falls City. Whitewater rafts now race through the same rapids as a belted kingfisher works the shallows below. Its dry, rattling call carries over the water long before the bird comes into view. From a branch above the current, it watches for movement, then launches head first and disappears beneath the surface. A successful dive brings a small fish clamped crosswise in its long bill, before the kingfisher returns to its perch to swallow the catch. When no branch offers a clear view, it can hover above the water, bill pointed down as it searches for prey. Its survival depends on clean water and the exposed banks where it hunts, while nearby Cucumber Falls sends a side stream cascading away from the plateau. The water spills over the rock ledge in a thin sheet, feeding a cool gorge where ferns and mosses spread beneath the forest canopy. Come spring, temporary pools appear among the trees, drawing the spotted salamander, its dark body marked with bright yellow spots. For most of the year, it stays hidden beneath logs, rocks, and leaf litter, but one warm rain can bring thousands out at once, all heading for the fishless pools where they began life. There, their eggs take on a green tint as algae grow inside the jelly, helping supply oxygen to the developing salamanders. Elsewhere, another fragile community once gathered at Schoenbrunn Village, Ohio's first organized settlement. Moravian missionaries and Delaware families founded it together, building homes, a church, and a schoolhouse, while trying to remain neutral as war spread through the region. They also wrote one of the territory's earliest sets of laws, but neutrality offered little protection, and raids eventually forced the community to abandon the site. The settlement then faded from memory for nearly a century before archaeologists uncovered its foundations, unlike the wreck at Kinzua Bridge State Park. The whole viaduct went up in a single summer, soaring above the creek and carrying coal, timber, and freight across the steep mountains. When it opened, it was the tallest and longest railroad bridge in the world, earning a reputation as the eighth wonder of the world. Excursion trains soon brought sightseers from as far away as Buffalo, while heavier engines eventually forced a rebuild in steel. Freight continued to cross until the line became obsolete, and inspectors finally closed the span. One July afternoon, a tornado tore through the valley, and seconds after the restoration crew escaped, most of the towers collapsed into the gorge. With rusted anchor bolts weakened and rebuilding deemed too costly, the fallen bridge stayed where it landed, now circled by turkey vultures riding the rising air along the gorge walls. They can perch for hours on cliffs, dead trees, and bridge ruins, waiting for the day's warm air to build before taking to the sky. Once airborne, they barely need to flap, using rising currents to circle for miles as they search the ground below. Their unusual gift is an exceptional sense of smell, allowing them to locate carrion hidden beneath leaves from high above. They can even follow the same gases that leak from decomposing animals, which has led crews to watch circling vultures for clues to leaks along buried pipelines. By finding carcasses before they decay further, these birds help clear potential sources of disease from the forest. Downriver, Marietta built its fortunes on everything the Ohio River could carry. Founded by Revolutionary War veterans, it became the first permanent American settlement in the Northwest Territory, set where the Ohio and Muskingum rivers meet. Those waterways made the town a hub for flatboats, steamboats, timber, livestock, and trade, while enormous earthworks already marked the ground of earlier peoples. Marietta prospered as a river port until railroads shifted trade away from the waterways and slowed its growth. Today, the river still draws visitors each autumn for the Ohio River Sternwheel Festival, when paddle wheel boats return to the waterfront. For one weekend, the landing becomes a gathering place for sternwheelers, with races on the river as the main event. Music and fireworks close the celebration, while nearby Concrete City shows how quickly a coal mining town could disappear. Built by a coal railroad as a model town, it housed miners and their families around a central courtyard with tennis courts, a baseball field, and a wading pool. But the concrete trapped moisture, and when the township demanded a sewer, the company refused and abandoned the settlement. The buildings proved too stubborn to demolish, so the ruins stayed behind as the mining story moved on to Frostburg. It began as a stop on the National Road, where one family built the first house and turned it into a stagecoach inn. Beneath the valley lay the Big Vein, a thick, shallow coal seam that made Georges Creek one of Maryland's most productive mining basins. When the railroads arrived, coal replaced travelers, and a tunnel was bored beneath the town to carry it east. At its high elevation, Frostburg's slogan, "It's just cooler here," works two ways. The mountain brings cooler summers, while cooler also reflects the town's creative local culture. A tourist train still climbs the mountain and turns at the old depot, and the woods beside the tracks are home to the Coyote. Larger and heavier than those of the Western Plains, it has a broader skull, longer legs, and a coat that can resemble a wolf's. That resemblance is no accident. As the species moved east through Canada, it interbred with wolves, carrying some of that ancestry into mountains the larger predators had already abandoned. These eastern animals spread quickly, meeting other populations across the Northeast. Their menu is just as varied: rabbits, mice, fawns, fruit, and insects, with most hunting done around dawn and dusk. One of the coyote's common targets is the groundhog, a much slower animal that survives by disappearing underground. Heavy-bodied and low to the ground, this animal is the largest member of the squirrel family in these hills. It grazes on grasses, clover, dandelions, and garden plants, rarely venturing far from the safety of its burrow. Around Appalachian farms, their appetite for crops can make them unwelcome visitors, especially where gardens and fields sit close to their burrows. Despite its stocky build, it can climb trees and swim well when escape requires it. Come autumn, it eats without pause, then seals itself into a winter chamber and shuts almost everything down. Unlike the bear, it is a true hibernator, with its heartbeat dropping from a steady rhythm to just a few beats a minute. Its most famous relative wakes for a crowd in Pennsylvania every February, but over in Ohio, Athens built its name on something else. The town grew around Ohio University, the first public university in the Northwest Territory, making it a center for learning and culture. Potters, woodworkers, musicians, and folk artists keep Appalachian traditions alive, while the local studio turns scrap aluminum into bright flowers, the town's emblem. Every September, the hills give up something else worth celebrating, and the Ohio Pawpaw Festival fills a lakeside field with it. Pawpaw is North America's largest edible native fruit, custard soft inside and tasting closer to mango than to anything growing this far north. It bruises within days of picking and never reaches supermarkets, so the festival is where many people first taste one. Cook-offs, eating contests, and live music fill the weekend, but Oakland has its own way of celebrating autumn, with the trees as the star of the show. The town grew when the railroad reached the mountains, opening routes for timber and visitors, and a railroad owner soon built a resort hotel in the cool mountain air. Each October, the Autumn Glory Festival turns Oakland and the surrounding county into 5 days of fall color, craft markets, music, and 2 parades. Its roots lie with local turkey growers, whose community dinners launched the festival. Today, the Grand Parade fills downtown with bands, floats, and more. From there, the forest continues across the New York line into Allegheny State Park. Almost every acre was logged bare a century ago, but sugar maple, beech, black cherry, and hemlock have reclaimed the park. Also, that forest now shelters bears, turkeys, and deer, with the scarlet tanager adding a flash of red among the leaves. It spends much of its time high among the leaves, picking off caterpillars, beetles, wasps, and wild berries. When a stinging insect becomes the meal, the bird beats it against the branch until the stinger is safely removed. Its voice is a hoarse, burry version of a robin's, and most people hear it long before they find it. Once the light goes, these same woods pass to an animal that reads the world with its hands, the raccoon. Black mask, ringed tail, and a body built low and heavy enough to come down a trunk head first. That dark mask may reduce glare in the dim light where it does most of its foraging. Its front paws are highly sensitive, able to find objects by touch, while water softens the skin and heightens the nerves beneath it. That may be why a raccoon appears to wash its food, even when there is nothing to clean. Around farms and towns, that intelligence has made it a familiar nuisance, with raccoons raiding gardens, cornfields, garbage bins, and even poultry yards. Hands that are capable are rare out here, though people put theirs to a stranger purpose at Zor Village. German separatists founded the community with borrowed money, sharing property and giving up private marriage to help it survive. During a brutal winter, the community went further, separating married couples and banning marriage for 8 years while survival took priority. Cleanliness was treated just as seriously, with residents even required to scrub the bark of public trees. The community grew wealthy from wool, iron, and beer, but younger members grew tired of communal life and wanted a life beyond Zor, pushing the community toward dissolution. The orchards still bear fruit, and in the canopy, the Blackburnian warbler passes through. No other North American warbler has a throat quite like it, glowing orange against a black-streaked face and chest. Up in the conifers, it searches the outer branches for caterpillars, beetles, and spiders, rarely coming close to the ground. Almost its entire life is spent among the treetops, where its small size and quick movements make it difficult to follow. Each spring, it travels north from the Andes to breed in the spruce and hemlock forests of these mountains, then heads south again when autumn arrives. Its journey follows routes that once carried people and wagons west along the National Road through Grantsville. The town grew around the National Road, the first major highway built with federal funds, as wagon trains, drovers, and merchants crossed the mountains. Its inns filled with travelers, as shops and workshops supplied those making the difficult way west. Railroads eventually drew traffic away, but traditional crafts carried on, with weavers, potters, and bird carvers still working in a cluster of old log buildings. Just east of town, the old road crosses the Castleman River on a single stone arch, built to carry travelers over the water. The bridge was built when the National Road still carried wagon traffic and became one of the longest single-span stone bridges in the country. Its arch rises unusually high because its builders expected canal boats to pass beneath it, though the canal was never built. Wagons crossed for generations, and after dark, the fields on both banks belonged to the barn owl. Pale gold above and white below, it carries a heart-shaped face that acts like a natural sound collector. Across open farmland, it searches for voles, mice, and shrews, often after sunset when its prey is hardest to see. Its ears sit at slightly different heights, so a sound reaches each side at a different moment, allowing the owl to pinpoint movement in complete darkness. Even the flight is built for stealth. Fine fringes along the wing edges break up turbulence and keep the approach almost silent. Silence like that mattered once in these mountains, where a young officer dug in at Fort Necessity in a Pennsylvania meadow. French troops attacked the stockade through a day of rain, forcing George Washington to surrender and sign terms that acknowledged responsibility for the earlier clash. The defeat marked the opening of the French and Indian War, a conflict that would spread across North America. A century later, another kind of force was at work farther west, where furnaces glowed day and night in Youngstown, the steel capital of Appalachian Ohio. Coal, iron ore, and rail lines converged here, allowing the city to turn raw materials into steel on an enormous scale. Mills lined the Mahoning River, drawing workers from across Europe and filling the valley with neighborhoods, schools, and homes built around the industry. Wages ran high and home ownership higher, though the area had almost no other industry to fall back on. For generations, steel offered some of the region's best-paid work, until Campbell Works closed with little warning, wiping out thousands of jobs and helping empty much of the valley. Long before the furnaces, the Mahoning River turned a water wheel at Lanterman's Mill. Built beside a gorge that is now a city park, the mill once ground grain for the farms that surrounded it. After years of neglect, careful restoration brought the old machinery back to life, with the wheel spinning once more to grind corn. Now the river runs clear enough for the bald eagle to return, fishing its waters once again. White head, white tail, a hooked beak built to tear through flesh, and wings broad enough to cast a shadow across the water. With those broad wings, it can ride rising air for long periods with barely a flap. Wildlife officers once brought young eagles from Saskatchewan and released them along rivers as the population struggled. Since then, the species has spread across the region, returning to large rivers and reservoirs where food is plentiful. For all that fish, a hungry eagle may still take a North American porcupine from the forest floor. Slow and short-sighted, it spends much of the night in the trees, stripping bark and nibbling leaves, buds, and twigs. Its body is covered with thousands of sharp quills, but the face offers a vulnerable target. Some of what these hills swallowed is still down there, including the abandoned settlement around Moonville Tunnel. A local farmer gave the railroad land to reach the coal underground, and the community grew around the tracks with a school, depot, store, and saloon. With no major roads, residents walked the active railroad tracks and crossed high wooden trestles just to buy food or visit neighbors. When the mines closed and the trains stopped, families left one by one until the forest reclaimed the town, leaving only scattered foundations and the tunnel. Elsewhere, Centralia emptied far faster, and the ground beneath it is still burning. It grew around nearby coal deposits, reaching its peak with thousands of residents, churches, hotels, shops, and saloons supporting a busy mining community. Its streets could turn violent after dark, with rival local gangs fighting turf battles and carrying out nighttime attacks in the surrounding hills. Trouble began when a landfill fire spread into an exposed coal seam beneath the town, sending smoke through streets and basements for years. The underground fire continues through the abandoned mine, while Olean built its fortune from oil rising beneath the ground. Its name came from the promise of petroleum, and when the Bradford oil field opened, it really became a rail and pipeline center for crude from wells across the region. Tank farms spread west of town, and pipelines carried the oil onward to markets far beyond the Allegheny Mountains. As larger fields opened farther west and the local wells declined, the oil boom faded, leaving its wealth behind in places like St. Mary of the Angels. Built during the oil boom, the church rises in Gothic Revival style, with pointed arches, detailed stonework, and tall stained glass windows fit for a cathedral. Its scale reflects the prosperity that once flowed through the region, much as Ohio's canals carried wealth by water. Along one of those waterways, Roscoe Village grew beside the canal after a struggling merchant chose the cheaper side of the river, betting farmers would cross the water to trade. When the Ohio and Erie Canal reached the village, it became a busy wheat shipping port, with warehouses and canal boats crowding the towpath. Railroads took the freight, and a major flood ruined the canal, but decades later, a retired glove manufacturer restored the village after seeing an old painting of its canal days. Over that restored towpath, the ridges carry traffic of another kind, and the Golden Eagle is the largest of it. This eastern population nests in the far north of Quebec and Labrador, then follows the Appalachian ridges south for winter. Unlike the birds of the western plains, these eagles spend much of their time over steep, wooded country where people rarely see them. For decades, their movements were poorly understood, and confirmed nests in the Northeast are now exceptionally rare. Each spring and autumn, many pass through narrow stretches of the Appalachians, using rising air along the ridges to travel with little effort. Some migrate remarkable distances, with northern breeders reaching wintering grounds far to the south. Almost nothing on the ground below is safe from a hunter this powerful, though the eastern box turtle comes closer than most. A hinge across its underside lets the shell close at both ends, sealing the turtle behind a door of bone. Its shell also serves as a permanent home, and some individuals can live for many decades within a small, familiar range, often returning if they are moved. Even creatures tied to one patch of ground can be displaced when people reshape the land, as Maryland did by flooding a valley to create Deep Creek Lake. No other lake in the state holds as much water, but its purpose was never recreation. A power company cleared the valley, moved roads, and built a dam to create a reservoir for hydroelectric power, using released water to spin turbines and generate electricity. Nature filled the basin far faster than engineers expected, and the lake soon became a source of power before boats and cottages transformed its shores. The state later acquired the lakebed, but the power company retained the dam and the machinery that still controls the water. Everything depends on the barrier across the valley, where Deep Creek Dam holds back an entire reservoir. The structure stretches across the valley as a massive embankment of packed earth and rock rather than concrete. Water leaves through a low intake, plunging through a tunnel inside the mountain before reaching the power station below. The cold, clear water created an ideal refuge for rainbow trout, which found conditions here more favorable than many native fish. Native to Pacific waters, they were brought east and released into lakes and streams far beyond their original range. Cold, oxygenated water suits them best, so they spend the hottest months in the deeper parts of the lake. State crews continue to stock them, and the cold tail race below the dam has become a popular fishery in its own right. Water drawn from the bottom keeps the outflow cool even in summer, bringing trout close to the surface. That concentration of fish does not go unnoticed from above, where the osprey has the tools to take advantage. Almost everything about this bird is shaped around one prey: fish. Its spiny toe scales help it grip slippery fish, while valves shut its nostrils as it dives below the surface. From high above, it dives feet first, sometimes disappearing completely, then hauls itself back into the air with powerful wing beats. After a successful dive, it often settles on a dead branch or pole to tear the fish apart, gripping the meal between its feet. Another bird carrying a catch may face a sudden attack, as an osprey tries to force it to drop the fish and claims the meal. From old forests and abandoned towns to rivers that still feed the land, the Northern Appalachians continue to turn survival into a way of life. This is Northern Appalachia, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of Pennsylvania, check out this video.